Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Chile Peppers, A Global History by Dave Dewitt. Narrated by Gary Tiedemann. Publisher's Note. This audiobook refers to photos included in the print and e-book editions of the book. Introduction. I have been writing this book for 44 years, and I'm not done yet, despite the fact that you're holding it in your hands. That's because my research on the subjects of chili peppers and fiery foods never ends. Just like the archaeological discoveries at Seren that are documented in Chapter 1, some new disclosure about chili peppers will crop up, and by the sheer force of my interest, I'll compulsively write about it. This is my writing niche. It's what I do, and why I'm called the Pope of Peppers. Over those 44 years, I've written, sometimes with co-authors, 42 published books on chili peppers and fiery foods, and hundreds of articles published in magazines and on blogs and websites. I've chosen some of my best writing from past projects for this book, and also added new material that's previously unpublished in print form. So this book is partly a culinary history and partly a memoir about my trips around the world to research chili usage in many different cuisines. Although this book is not designed to be a cookbook, I have selected several representative recipes for each chapter so one can create the flavors they are hearing about in their own kitchens. If one wants more recipes, I have thousands posted on fieryfoodscentral.com. And there's always my book, 1001 Best Hot and Spicy Recipes. Please remember that I am writing about the past, not the present, and that things have changed over the decades. Some of the people mentioned in this book are no longer with us, unfortunately, but fond memories of them linger. Some of the countries my wife and I explored are edgy to the point of being dangerous in certain circumstances, so be careful in all the countries mentioned in this book, and especially when visiting Mexico, Jamaica, and South Africa. Travelers are safer if they stay in designated tourist areas and should always try to find locals as guides, even if they have to be hired. That's the way Mary Jane and I have traveled over all these years, and we've never had any problems at all. We were warned about pickpockets in Rome, narcotraficantes in Mexico, Asian gangs in Cabramatta, Australia, thieves in Belize, and muggers in every large city. But by following a few basic rules, none of the bad guys bothered us. Hang with the locals. Don't try to buy any illegal drugs. Don't get drunk. Don't be loud or call attention to yourself. But do use credit cards and avoid showing a lot of cash. We had a street-smart guide named Tony in Jamaica who drove us all over the island, and I told him to take us only to restaurants where there were no white faces. "No problem, man," he said. And he was right. There were none, because he was with us. One of our black guides in South Africa was shocked when we invited him to have lunch with us. In Barbados, the same thing was a common occurrence. So be adaptable and go with the flow. If offered a choice between an American breakfast and a local one, choose the latter. Smile a lot wherever you travel, and don't be the stereotyped ugly American. The 5 domesticated capsicum species. Because the species names of the capsicum genus are mentioned so often in this book, I'm placing the definitions here for quick and easy reference. Annuum. The name means annual, which of course is inaccurate, as chilies are perennials in climates where there are no freezes. This is the most grown species in the world, in both gardening and agriculture, and its varieties are commonly known all over the world. The bells, jalapenos, cayennes, anchos, serranos, New Mexicans, paprikas, and ornamentals are all of the annuum species. Bacatum. The species name means berry-like, and it is native to South America, where the varieties are commonly called ají. There are at least 2 wild forms, varieties bacatum and microcarpum, and many domesticated forms. The domesticated ajís have a great diversity of pod shape and size, ranging from short, pointed pods borne erect to long, pendant pods resembling the New Mexican varieties. They are cultivated in most South American countries. Chinense. This species was misnamed Capsicum chinense in 1776 by Nicolaus van Jacquin, a Dutch physician who collected plants in the Caribbean for Emperor Francis I from 1754 to 1759. Jacquin, who first described the species as chinense in his work Hortus Botanicus Vindobonensis, wrote mysteriously, "I have taken the plant's name from its homeland." He was dead wrong, of course. All capsicums are New World plants. Many people, including myself, believe that the species name should be changed to Capsicum cheiro, which would mean perfumed pepper, because cheiro is Portuguese for aroma or smell. All chinense have a unique aroma similar to apricots. Habaneros and all the superhots, including the Carolina Reaper, the hottest capsicum in the world, belong to this South American and Caribbean species. Frutescens. Tabascos are the most commonly known peppers in the frutescens species, and the name means shrub-like. There is very little pod diversity, and the Brazilian Malagueta variety looks the same as a Tabasco. Tabascos are grown in Central and South America to make the famous sauce of the same name. Pubescens. This is the most obscure capsicum species, and it too has little or no pod diversity. It is the only species with black seeds, and its name means hairy, an allusion to its fuzzy leaves. The pods resemble small apples, hence the common name manzano in Mexico. In South America, they are commonly called rocotos. This species has no wild form, and it is grown in the Andes and also in Oaxaca, Mexico. There are two forms, red and yellow, canarios, and the pods are quite hot, 30,000 to 50,000 Scoville heat units, SHU. 1. The domestication of the wild chili. For more than 10,000 years, humans have been fascinated by a seemingly innocuous plant with bright-colored fruits that bite back when bitten. Although the chili pepper has risen in our estimation from lowly weed to celebrity spice, the secrets of its domestication, its discovery by Europeans, and its subsequent spread around the world are still being uncovered. Often mistakenly thought to be of African or Indian origin, chili peppers are absolutely American. Along with corn, squash, potatoes, and beans, they are among the earliest and most important plants domesticated by mankind in the New World. The tolerated weed. According to botanist Barbara Pickersgill, the genus Capsicum, to which all chilies belong, originated in the remote geologic past in an area bordered by the mountains of southern Brazil to the east, by Bolivia to the west, and by Paraguay and northern Argentina to the south. Not only does this location have the greatest concentration of wild species of chilies in the world, but here, and only here, grow representatives of all the major domesticated species within the genus. Another chili botanist, W. Hardy Eschbaugh, believes that the location for the origin of chili peppers was further east, in central Bolivia along the Rio Grande. Scientists are not certain about the exact time frame or the method for the spread of both wild and domesticated species from the southern Brazil-Bolivia area, but they suspect that birds were primarily responsible. The wild chilies, like their undomesticated cousin of today, the chiltepín, had erect red fruits that were quite pungent and were very attractive to various species of birds that ate the whole pods. The seeds of those pods passed through their digestive tracts intact and were deposited on the ground encased in a perfect fertilizer. In this manner, chilies spread all over South and Central America long before the first Asian tribes moved east and settled the New World. When humans arrived in the Americas between 15,000 and 25,000 years ago, about 25 species of the genus Capsicum existed in South America. 5 of these species were later domesticated. However, some of the other wild species were, and still are, occasionally utilized. 2 of the 5 domesticated species of chilies, Capsicum baccatum and Capsicum pubescens, never migrated beyond South America. Baccatum, known as ají, merely extended its range from southern Brazil west to the Pacific Ocean and became a domesticated chili of choice in Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, and Chile. Likewise, Capsicum pubescens left Brazil to be domesticated in the Andes, where it is known as rocoto. Its range today is primarily in the higher elevations of Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador, although it was introduced during historical times into mountainous areas of Costa Rica, Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. 3 other capsicum species that were later domesticated are Annuum, Chinense, and Frutescens. These closely related species shared a mutual ancestral gene pool and are known to botanists as the Annuum Chinense Frutescens complex. They seem to have sprung up in the wilds of Colombia and later migrated individually to Central America and Amazonia. These 3 species were all in place when humans arrived on the scene, and apparently each type was domesticated independently. Annuum in Mexico, Chinense in Amazonia, and possibly Peru, and Frutescens in southern Central America. These 3 species have become the most commercially important chilies, and the story of their domestication and further spread is revealed in the archaeological record. The earliest evidence of chili peppers in the human diet is from Mexico, where archaeologist R.S. McNeish discovered chili seeds dating from about 7,500 BC during his excavations at Tamaulipas and Tehuacan. This find and an intact pod from Peru's Guitarrero cave, dated 6,500 BC, seem to indicate that chilies were under cultivation approximately 10,000 years ago. However, that date is extremely early for crop domestication, and some experts suggest that these specimens are chilies that were harvested in the wild rather than cultivated by man. The common bean, Phaseolus vulgaris, was also found in the same excavation levels, and scientists cannot be certain if they were wild or domesticated varieties. Experts are certain, however, that chili peppers were domesticated by at least 3,300 BC. Ethnobotanists, scientists who study the relationship of plants to mankind, have theorized that during the domestication process, chilies were first accepted as tolerated weeds. They were not cultivated, but rather collected in the wild when the fruits were ripe. The wild forms had erect fruits that were deciduous, meaning that they separated easily from the calyx and fell to the ground. During the domestication process, whether consciously or unconsciously, early Indian farmers selected seeds from plants with larger, non-deciduous, and pendant fruits. The reasons for these selection criteria are a greater yield from each plant and protection of the pods from chili-hungry birds. The larger the pod, the greater will be its tendency to become pendant rather than to remain erect. Thus, the pods became hidden amid the leaves and did not protrude above them as beacons for birds. The selection of varieties with the tendency to be non-deciduous ensured that the pods remained on the plant until fully ripe, and thus were resistant to dropping off as a result of wind or physical contact. The domesticated chilies gradually lost their natural means of seed dispersal by birds and became dependent upon human intervention for their continued existence. Because chilies cross-pollinate, hundreds of varieties of the 5 domesticated chilies developed over thousands of years. The color, size, and shape of the pods of these domesticated forms varied enormously. Ripe fruits could be red, orange, brown, yellow, or white. Their shapes could be round, conic, elongate, oblate, or bell-like, and their size could vary from the tiny fruits of chiltepins or tabascos to the large pods of the anchos and New Mexican varieties. However, no matter what the size or shape of the pods, they were readily adopted into the customs and cuisines of all the major civilizations of the New World. Pre-Columbian chili customs and kitchens. Chilies were the major spice of the New World and played a role similar to that of black pepper in the Old World. Ancient New World cultures, from Mexico to South America, combined the pungent pods with every conceivable meat and vegetable. Our knowledge of the pre-Columbian culinary uses of chili peppers is derived from many sources: archaeological finds, Indian artifacts and illustrations of the period, Spanish and Portuguese explorers of the 16th and 17th centuries, botanical observations, and studies of the cooking methods of the modern descendants of the Incas, Mayas, and Aztecs. This examination of the culinary uses of chilies begins in one of the major regions where they were first cultivated, the Andes. It was there that the great Inca civilization came to depend upon the chilies as their principal spice and a major crop. At the heart of the Incan Empire was farming, which determined nearly every aspect of society: the calendar, religion, law, and even war. The Incas were farmer soldiers, likely to be called out of their elaborately terraced and irrigated fields at any time to defend the empire or extend its boundaries. But farming took precedence over fighting, and some later uprisings against the Spanish failed because the Inca soldiers left the battlefront to return to their fields. It has been estimated that more kinds of foods and medicinal plants were systematically cultivated in the Andes than anywhere else in the world at any time. The result of the Incan agricultural expertise included 240 varieties of potatoes, nearly as many kinds of beans, 20 types of maize, plus sweet potatoes, peanuts, pineapples, quinoa, chocolate, avocados, papayas, tomatoes, and of course, several varieties of the beloved chili pepper. The Incan historian Garcilaso de la Vega, known as El Inca, wrote in detail about chili peppers and their place in Incan culture. In his Royal Commentaries of the Incas, he noted that chilies were the favorite fruit of the Indians, who ate them with everything they cooked, whether stewed, boiled, or roasted. He traced the nomenclature of the plant. The pods were called uchu by the Incas, pimiento de las Indias by the Spaniards, and ají by the people of the West Indies, a name that became quite common in the Andes in later times. The Incas worshipped the chili pepper as one of the four brothers of their creation myth. Agar Uchu, or Brother Chili Pepper, was believed to be the brother of the first Incan king. Garcilaso de la Vega observed that the chili pods were perceived to symbolize the teachings of the early Incan brothers. Chili peppers were thus regarded as holy plants, and the Incas' most rigorous fasts were those prohibiting all chilies. According to El Inca, the Incas raised 3 types of chilies. The first was called rocot uchu, thick pepper, which described the long, thick pods that matured to yellow, red, and purple. The most likely identification of these chilies would be the ají type, Capsicum baccatum. El Inca forgot the name of the next type, but wrote that it was used exclusively by the royal household. The third chili he described was chinchi uchu, which resembles exactly a cherry with its stalk. This type, with its name and cherry-like pods both still intact, has survived to this day in Peru and Bolivia. It is the rocoto, a variety of Capsicum pubescens and the only capsicum with black seeds. El Inca noted that the chinchi uchu was incomparably stronger than the rest, and only small quantities of it are found. El Inca also collected some chili anecdotes. Chilies were reputedly good for the sight, were avoided by poisonous creatures, and had been offered as one of the gifts to appease Pizarro and his invading soldiers. As a final culinary note, El Inca unconsciously predicted the spread of chili around the world when he noted, "All the Spaniards who come to Spain from the Indies are accustomed to it and prefer it to all oriental spices." Thus, the invaders were conquered by the fiery foods of the Incas. Most Incan dishes were vegetarian because fish and meat were luxuries, at least for the commoners. The Incan royalty, however, did consume fish caught in the rich coastal waters and Lake Titicaca, and also ate deer, wild llama, guanaco, and vizcacha, a large rodent. But the royalty would not consume dogs, domesticated ducks, and cuy, guinea pigs, meat sources beloved by the peasants when they could obtain them. The Incas' morning meal was extremely simple. Leftovers from the previous evening and a cup of chicha, a mildly intoxicating beverage made from fermented corn. Around noon, an Inca family would gather for the midday meal, which was prepared by boiling or baking because cooking fats and frying were uncommon. Corn was often boiled with chili peppers, potatoes, and herbs to make a stew called mote. Another midday meal of the Incas was locro, a stew made from sun-dried llama meat, dehydrated potatoes, and chilies. The evening meal was eaten at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon and was usually a soup or stew similar to the midday feast. Potatoes were ubiquitous. But food was not the only use for the beloved chilies. According to historian L.E. Valcárcel, chili peppers were so highly valued in Inca society that they were probably used as currency. Since there were no coins or bills in those days, certain preferred products like chilies became part of a rudimentary monetary system. He noted that until the mid-20th century, shoppers in the plaza of Cusco could buy goods with ranti, a handful of chilies. The Incas decorated bowls, dishes, and other vessels with chili pepper designs. Chilies also were the subject of embroidery designs. One example of textile art of the early Nazca period is a yarn-embroidered cotton cloth showing the figures of 23 farmers carrying their crops. One of the farmer figures is wearing chili pods around his neck and carrying a plant bearing pods. About AD 900, a sculptor of the Chavin culture in Peru carved elaborate designs into a sharp-pointed granite shaft measuring 8 feet high and a foot wide that has become known as the Tello obelisk. The principal figure on this obelisk is a mythical creature, the black caiman. The sharp point of the stone corresponds to a real caiman's narrow snout, and the end of the stone is carved with the feet and claws of the reptile, which are holding the leaves and pods of a chili plant. As yet, no scholar has deciphered the meaning of a magical caiman grasping chili peppers in its claws, but the image is suggestive of the magical powers that the people of the Andes Indians believed were inherent in the powerful pods. As chili peppers spread north through Central America and Mexico, they gained the reputation of being not only a spicy condiment, but also a powerful medicine. The pre-Columbian tribes of Panama used chilies in combination with cacao and tobacco, and probably other plants, to enter into hallucinatory trances. According to scientist Mary Helms, these Indians used chilies to travel to the heavens or to the underworld to negotiate with the good and evil spirits on behalf of mankind. Today, the Cuna Indians of Panama burn chilies so the irritating smoke will drive away evil spirits during a girl's puberty ceremony. They also trail a string of chilies behind their canoes to discourage sharks from attacking. I should caution modern sportsmen that the efficacy of chilies as a shark repellent has never been verified. In southern Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula, chili peppers have been part of the human diet since about 7,500 BC, and thus their usage predates the two great Central American civilizations, the Maya and the Aztec. From their original usage as a spice collected in the wild, chilies gained importance after their domestication, and they were a significant food when the Olmec culture was developing, around 1000 BC. About 500 BC, the Monte Alban culture, in the valley of Oaxaca, began exporting a new type of pottery vessel to nearby regions. These vessels resembled the handheld molcajete mortars of today, and were called suchilquitongo bowls. While the metate was used for heavy grinding, the suchilquitongo bowl was used to mash relatively soft foods. Like a food processor today, the new bowl made it possible to mash foods together to make a sauce. Because the molcajetes are used to crush chili pods and make salsas today, the suchilquitongo bowls are probably the first evidence we have for the creation of crushed chili and chili sauces. Scientists speculate that the suchilquitongo bowls were specifically developed for the purpose of sauce making, and both the tool and the product were then exported. The legacy of the Mayas. A carved glyph found in the ceremonial center of Monte Alban is further evidence of the early importance of chili peppers. It features a chili plant with 3 pendant pods on one end and the head of a man on the other. Some experts believe that the glyph is one of a number of tablets of conquest that marked the sites conquered by the Monte Alban culture. By the time the Mayas reached the peak of their civilization in southern Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula, around AD 500, they had a highly developed system of agriculture. Maize was their most important crop, followed closely by beans, squash, chili peppers, and cacao. Perhaps as many as 30 different varieties of chilies were cultivated. They were sometimes planted in plots by themselves, but more often in fields already containing tomatoes and sweet potatoes. The Mayas also cultivated cotton, papayas, vanilla beans, maniocs, and agave. They kept domesticated turkeys, ducks, and dogs, and their main game animals were deer, birds, and wild boars. Armadillos and manatees were considered delicacies. For breakfast, the Mayas ate a gruel of ground maize spiced with chili peppers, which is usually called atole, but is sometimes known as pozol. A modern equivalent would be cornmeal or masa mixed with water and ground red chilies to the consistency of a milkshake. For the main or evening meal, stews of vegetables and meats heavily spiced with chilies were served. Various pipillans, still served today, are early forms of the mole sauces to come and use 2 common Mexican chilies, ancho and pasilla. Of course, the Mayas would have served turkey rather than chicken, which was introduced by the Spanish, but either fowl is acceptable. Using the same technology that proved the use of chocolate at Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, researchers have analyzed the contents of the residue of pots from ancient Mexico and discovered traces of chilies without chocolate. This indicates that either chili sauces were being made or they were used to spice up other beverages, about 1,000 years earlier than the Seren archaeological site in El Salvador. Terry Powis, associate professor of anthropology, and colleagues at Kennesaw State University in Georgia have chemically analyzed the residue in 13 pottery vessels, including spouted jars, pots, and vases, dating from 1,700 to 2,400 years ago that were found at an archaeological site in the state of Chiapas, which was at that time inhabited by the Mixe-Zoquean people. The best and most direct evidence for chili pepper use in Mesoamerica prior to our study is from Seren, says Powis. So, our work pushes back this date from circa AD 540 to circa 400 BC. To be honest, our study is the only one of its kind to show direct evidence of chili pepper use. In all of the other examples listed in the paper, there is only indirect evidence of chiles and pots found together. We actually linked the two together for the first time, and that is an important development. Therefore,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?